Welcome to Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety, where we talk about the real issues out on the road, focus on safe driving, and learn industry best practices from your hosts Kenny Ray, Mike Bohan, and Jim Seibert, in the hopes that by driving the line, we get more drivers home safe and sound. This podcast was made possible by Marsh McLennan Agency.
Welcome, everybody, to Driving the Line, the podcast that is always in the pursuit of safety. This is Mike Bohan, and I've got Jim Seibert and Kenny Ray in here with me. And we're glad to be spending a little time with you today talking truck safety. And if you're a new listener, we're sure glad you decided to check us out, see what we're all about. And really, in a nutshell, what we're about is supporting the transportation industry. And in a specific way, we talk truck safety and risk management. That's what we talk about. That's what we do. So hopefully you get some benefit out of listening to what we've got to say and the information that we're sharing. And hopefully you come back and maybe tell a few friends about us as well. So, well, you know, guys, is often when we're talking through our podcast about whatever topic that you want to plug into the blank here, there's two different aspects that we address. And the first one, there's a regulatory aspect when we talk about specific regulations that apply to whatever topic that we're talking about and how it applies to the trucking companies that are listening to us. And the second aspect or viewpoint is when we get beyond the compliance, when there's a discussion of best practices or tips of the trade or what the industry is doing on a daily basis to keep their drivers safe, really going above and beyond what the regulations require. And I think both are extremely important because we have to hit on that regulatory aspect. We've got to be in compliance, but we also need to talk about the things the regulations maybe don't really address specifically. And that's kind of where we're going to go today when we're discussing our topic of driver health, because this is an extremely important topic in the trucking industry. And it's more than just making sure that our drivers have a current medical card. There needs to be an importance placed on our drivers' health. We need to provide them with some tools that they can take with them when they're out there on the road to keep themselves in better shape, keep them healthy, you know, just really have a better quality of life. So today I want to get into some of the things that can lead to health issues, what some of those health issues are. Now, don't make any mistake. I mean, we're about anything we're sharing today. We're not physicians. None of us have medical degrees or anything like that. So we're not sharing that type of advice. But we do know, based on studies that are out there and what we know trucking companies and truck drivers come up against when they're out there on the road, there's some health issues that our drivers face. And so that's what we're going to discuss. And I know Jim and Kenny and I, we all put a lot of miles on every year. And we're not truck drivers. We don't claim to be, but we put a lot of windshield time in going out to visit clients. So we come up against some of the same things that truck drivers do when it comes to health issues and the sedentary nature of spending hours on the road where you don't really have a whole lot of access to quality, healthy food and where we're probably not getting enough exercise as well. But before we get into some of that stuff, one of the things I wanted to start with today was just to talk about the regulatory compliance when it comes to the medical certificate and the exam that the drivers have to go through. We want to talk about what the drivers need to know to make sure they're in compliance and what the companies need to know to make sure that their drivers have everything they need. So when we talk about the physical qualifications and examinations for the drivers, when we look in the regulations, we're looking in Part 391, Subpart E. That's where you're going to find it. And when you look in this subpart, this is where it's going to outline and talk about who needs to have the medical examination and the certificate, what the physical standards are that needs to be met. That's where you're going to find that information. And the regulations say that any person who's operating a commercial motor vehicle in interstate commerce must be medically examined and certified by a medical examiner who's on the National Registry. So for this part of the regulations, a commercial motor vehicle is defined in this way: a single or combination vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating or gross combination weight rating of 10,001 pounds or more. It's a vehicle that is designed or used to transport 9 or more passengers, including the driver. A vehicle that is designed or used to transport 16 or more passengers, including the driver, and is not used to transport passengers for compensation. Or any size vehicle when transporting hazardous materials that is required to be placarded. So for most of our listeners out there, I want you to focus on the first one I mentioned and the last one, the single or combination vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating or gross combination weight rating of 10,001 pounds or more. And then any vehicle that's got a placardable amount of hazmat. If you're driving those, you're required to be medically examined and certified. So if you're in good health, medical exams typically are going to last for 2 years. That's the max you can get. You can't get them for any longer than that. But you could be certified for a lesser amount of time if there is a medical condition that the examiner would like to follow up on. So you might get a 2 year, you might get a 1 year, you might get 9, 6, 3 months. It's really up to the medical examiner at that point. They've got their guidance that they go by, and it's their professional opinion. But once you get that medical card, once you get that certificate in hand, as far as the driver's concerned, then you immediately go to take that medical certificate to the state driver's licensing agency. Then once that takes place, the motor carriers out there are then required to run a new MVR within 15 days of that medical certificate being issued to that driver. And then that new MVR is going to be maintained in the driver qualification file. So that's kind of the process you go through in Part 391. There's a lot of other things that we could talk about, like medical variances and exemptions, things like that. But I wanted to keep that regulatory part really, really simple, and put this at the very end of it and say, if you've got issues in Part 391 or the medical exam, the medical certification, or just what standards drivers need to meet, reach out to your risk consultant. We'll sure help you walk through any issues you have there. But that's kind of the 30,000 foot view. But what I really wanted to do was open this up to you guys for discussion on driver health and our industry. And guys, in our industry of transportation and for our truck drivers and their health, what challenges are we facing? What are the big deals? What are the brick walls that we're running into as far as driver health and what our guys and gals that are driving trucks facing out there on the road?
You know, Mike, and you hit on one of them, the sedentary nature of the work. When a driver is physically driving the truck, he or she is sitting down, and although they are very attentive mentally and they're staying tuned in visually, they're watching what's going along. The fact is they sit for long, long periods of time. And what most of the tractors now have is a very, very comfortable seat. And so where you may think of somebody that works in a factory or manufacturing environment that's up moving around and at least flexing joints and stuff, you've got a truck driver that basically is not. And particularly on some of our OTR, over-the-road freight outfits, you know, they basically leave a yard with a loaded trailer and drive all day long. I mean, up to their 11 hours that they can, and they either drop that trailer or they get to another yard, but their job primarily consists of driving that truck. In fact, there's some trucking companies, the most work, if you will, physical labor that a driver has to do is get out and open the back doors on a trailer and back up to a dock. Now, there's some exceptions to that. You start getting over into the flatbed world where people are having to put tarps or they're having to do load securement on loads, or I come out of the tanker industry where guys have to pull hoses and connect hoses, or I have to literally climb ladders on a cargo tank to open the dome lid or vent the trailer or whatever. There's a little bit of work there, but by and large, the driving of the truck is a very sedentary activity where you're sitting long periods of time. And we've all seen studies that have been based on people that work in offices about how dangerous it is just to sit all day long, just to physically sit. And yet that's the very environment we put our drivers in. And you know, you mentioned what are the things that come to mind. Another one is the studies that have been done that show that the average age of truck drivers, if you took the entire population of truck drivers, the average age of a worker that's in the trucking industry tends to be about 10 years older than the average age of workers in other industries. So think about that. And I'm the old guy on our team of the three of us and the two ladies that manage our podcast. I'm just going to tell y'all, just life experiences. The older a person gets, things don't work as well anymore. You fall down and you get hurt, and it's a longer recovery time over those injuries. And every one of us have known really senior people that have fallen and broken hips and broken knees and all kind of things like that. So we're dealing with a trucking population. And Mike, you and I, we do a lot of audits of trucking companies, and I'll be looking through DQ files, driver qualification files, and I'll see the birth date of a truck driver, and I'll sit and say, is that man or woman still driving? I mean, they're what we would call senior adults. And that's fine. I mean, I if they're still able to work and do it safely, kudos to them. I encourage them. The point I'm making, I'm not making any discriminatory remarks about older people because I'm in that group. But the fact is, the older you get, health issues tend to get magnified. They tend to get exaggerated, if you will. You're more prone to injuries, and it's a longer recovery period of getting over them. And then when you talk about just general health issues, heaven forbid, we've heard, and fortunately they're one-offs. It's not rampant in our industry now, but of drivers that have either tried to falsify med cards or tried to go to a less than reputable medical provider to overlook things like diabetes, or the fact that they have a heart condition, or the fact that their vision has changed and it's not even correctable with lenses. And so the point is, we get into all of these health issues related to disease type things, such as diabetes and heart disease, but we also have this issue of injuries. And I know Jim's our OSHA guru, and in the OSHA world, slips, trips, and falls are a big thing, which OSHA primarily focuses either on general industries or on the construction industry. But Mike, we know coming out of the trucking world that slips, trips, and falls are a huge thing for us too. And oftentimes they're almost comical if you just look at them without thinking about how serious a driver got hurt. I mean, we have people that fall getting out of the truck. We have people that are walking across parking lots at truck stops and they trip on a rock. And you would sit and say, if all of us were still little boys and 10, 11 years old, somebody falls down, the other two would stand there and laugh at them. But you take a man or a woman that's in their 60s or 70s and they fall down on a parking lot. Next thing you know, you've got a dislocated hip. You've got a knee injury. You've got a broken ankle. You've got ribs that are injured. And the next thing you know, that driver's out of work, and you've got workers' comp issues. And so this whole idea about driver health, and again, we're not medical professionals, but we are safety professionals. And our job, our goal, the thing that drives the three of us every day is keeping folks from getting hurt and keeping folks healthy that are in the trucking industry. And so we need to be aware of the sedentary nature of the work, the fact we're dealing with an older work population, and that these health issues and these injuries, they occur a whole lot more. We tend to think that the number one way that a truck driver gets hurt is in a crash. That's not true. Even though they're operating motor vehicles, we get people hurt getting in and out of the truck. Again, slipping on a rock on the parking lot of a truck stop, pulling a hose out of a hose rack on a cargo tank, or trying to get a tarp on a load that has to be tarped in Oklahoma when the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, and the tarp literally pulls the driver off the trailer. It acts like a sail. I mean, there's all of these weird things that happen in our industry that represent dangers to our workforce. And so, when you ask what are those things, I think ultimately it leads us to the conclusion that we've got to be more intentional about focusing on keeping our drivers safe and healthy, and realize that's not going to occur by osmosis. It's not just going to happen by default. If we go to default, we're going to have more people hurt, more people injured, is what we're going to end up with.
And you mentioned those two categories. I'm going to punt over Jim here in a minute, but it's the disease and the injury. And as you're talking about, because you mentioned like flatbedders, tankers, you would think, well, they're more active than maybe drop and hook, that kind of thing. But, that's kind of a double-edged sword too, because if you drive, let's say you drive for 9 hours, at least I know if I drive for 3 hours and I get out of a vehicle, my knees hurt. Things aren't working quite like you got to stretch out. You got to get loose. And a lot of times if something needs to be tarped or untarped or whatever, they might have been driving for a long period of time. They're stiff. They're kind of stoved up. They get out. And they might go right to working. And even if they're dropping a trailer and they're cranking the dollar handle or something like that, I mean, a lot of injuries happen. They're torn rotator cuffs, the slips and falls out of as you mentioned, Kenny, out of a truck or across the parking lot. Sometimes that's happening after a driver has just driven 8 or 9 hours straight and they get out and maybe things just aren't working quite right. They take that first step and their knee buckles or something, and now they're on the ground. They've got a head injury. They've got, whatever. You mentioned all the injuries that could happen. But I think that's something that definitely happens, and age plays a part of that, but there's some of it's just the nature of the work, the nature of, I mean, you sit still for that long, you get up, you're not going to be moving quite like you should be moving until you get loosened up. And I think that's one area I know a lot of companies will talk about. Hey, make sure you're stretching, make sure you're doing proper stretching before you do any kind of physical work, because that's a way to get injured. But Jim, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in on that injury side of it at all, because I know that's in your wheelhouse as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in here real quick. Question for you too. If that driver's sitting behind the wheel going down the road, who regulates that driver? Who do they fall under?
Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration.
When they're on the road.
The moment that truck stops and that employee, that driver steps out of the vehicle and their feet are on the ground, then who are they regulated by?
They're fully under OSHA at that point.
Fully under OSHA at that point. So Kenny, you brought up some pretty excellent points there about, okay, we're a truck driver, but it's a non-uniform position dependent upon what are we hauling behind us, right? We got the flatbeds, we've got the tankers, we're hauling hoses, we're getting up on ladders that many OSHA folks would argue, hey, that's not a proper ladder. We might be on platforms, things of that nature. In the ag world, we have conducted studies for about the previous 10 years. And number one repeatedly across the ag industry are slips, trips, and fall incidents. Number one is to the same level, and number two is falls to a lower level. And so the key areas for injury there are always arms, wrists, elbows, shoulders, knees, ankles, hips. So anything you can imagine in a fall. And mounting and dismounting of that vehicle, right? It's not quite a stair. It's not quite a ladder. It could be awkward. There's handholds. There's a proper way to do it. I'm a 41-year-old, almost 42-year-old man. And when I get on a road trip and I'm sitting there for 3.5 hours before I run out of gas in my vehicle and I got to pull over and refill up, at 3 hours I get out, I'm a little bit fatigued, a little bit stove up. My tank is small. I'm making more stops than these guys are in a day. And I just can't imagine. I've pulled a 12, 14-hour road trip before. And by the time I get there, I am mentally exhausted. I am just physically tired. Every joint in my old military body, and I ain't that old, it hurts. And these guys that go and they can do 11 hours in a day and go a lot farther than I can. I think about how fit are they that they can pull that off day after day. It's exhausting to me. And if I had to do it a few days in a row, I'd be beat, needing a break. And so for that, I give a kudos and an encouragement, because truck drivers are tough. But being in the ag industry, I'm not getting the cream of the crop, previous football player or cheerleader or gymnastics person or physically fit people. I typically use this as a joke in my safety presentations. When we're talking about a ladder and a cage or a well that goes around the ladder, do all of my employees fit going up that cage or well? By the time I add some suspenders and I add a radio on their belt or a set of pliers, they ergonomically, they don't fit. And us three, we don't fall into the same extent, but we're on the road a lot. And if we're not on the road, where are we sitting? We're sitting right at our desk. The article I read the other day from OSHA says, where has the ergonomics focus gone? And the gist of that article was that has been a significant safety focal point. And it's something that I focus on when I'm doing my office and my warehouse and any spot where a person is sedentary. I look for items under a desk. How do they get comfortable on the keyboard? Where do their feet go? Do we have fully adjustable pedals, fully adjustable steering wheels, our shifters, things of that nature in and out? So they're all significant. They're all points to look at. They're all points to train for. And I would be surprised, and you guys inform me if I'm off here. Are our truck driver, our brothers and sisters in the industry, are we packing healthy food going up and down the road, or do we get truck stop stuff? Are we making sure that when we're taking our break or we're stopping to fill up, we're exercising full range of motion and loosening back up and getting our heart rate up a little bit before we get back in the truck? Do you think that happens? Does that fall in any of the safety and health programs for some of our trucking companies? Because if we're not focused on that level, then the macro incidents of ergonomics, such as falling down and tripping and standing up and getting lightheaded after being there for a while, or leaning over or grabbing that handle to open up a hopper bottom, all of those, if we're not loosening up and we've been stove up and cramped for the last 5.5, 6 hours, and we hop out and we think we're ready to get right back after it, that's when the injuries are going to happen.
You know, we mention pretty frequently that we've got a very diverse audience that listens, and we focus. Clearly, we're a trucking podcast, and we're unashamed of that. We're very proud of this industry. We love trucking, and we know that our primary listeners are either truck drivers, safety directors at trucking companies, or owners of trucking companies. And Jim, you bring up a point that so often we point a finger at a driver if they're overweight, if they're an older man or woman, if they walk with a limp, and you say, well, he or she got hurt, or we see them doing something that's not ergonomically correct, as you just mentioned. But the fact that we have safety directors and owners of trucking companies that listen to our podcast too, there are some system failures within our industry. And one thing, we always preface the fact that we are fiercely proud to be part of the American trucking industry. We love it with all of our heart. But there are times we need to take an introspective look at our industry and say, how can we do this better? And so part of the onus of our driver health and our driver safety has got to be on the systems within our trucking company. So you bring up diet, you bring up the food. And I know, Mike, you're going to make some comments on this, but it even comes down to, where do we compel our drivers to fuel? Where do we compel them to park? Are we putting them in proximity to locations where they can get healthy food? And Mike, you mentioned the three of us travel a lot, but we all drive four-wheelers. And so if I want to, I can pull into a place that's got healthy food. But if I've got a rig that's 70 feet long and weighs 80,000 pounds, and I'm in a community that has all sorts of city ordinances about where I can and can't park, guess where I'm going? I'm going to the truck stop, because that's the only place they'll let me go. And hooked on to the truck stop is a fast food joint, and there's nothing healthy on the menu at all. And so by default, we have put that driver into a situation that does not contribute to good health. And so when I mention our safety directors and our owners, if you really care enough about your drivers that this is an issue, start thinking through, particularly if you run dedicated routes where you're putting your trucks on the same highways every day. One day you get in your pickup or your company car and you drive that route and start figuring out, where are places I could get my guys or my gals, my drivers, to stop, where they could have access to a salad bar, or they could have access to something a little more healthy than where I'm putting them, where all they have access to is a greasy cheeseburger and a malt. That's all they can get. So, part of the onus of this, it's the driver's responsibility, but it's also we've got to do something from the systems end to quit putting by default these drivers into these situations where they have no choices other than to buy something off of a fast food menu.
Yeah, because most of the time, everybody that's listening, you can picture that. It's like you've got the truck stop X, and then there's the fast food joint there.
And you can just name them off. You don't have to name them, but every one of them is hooked to a truck stop somewhere.
Every one of them. And like you said, I mean, you might be able to go over on the gas station side and get, they got their little cooler there. They might have something there, but you see more and more of that now. But usually the quick option is, you get your fuel or you get your break done, and you're going to go in there and you're going to get your bag of food from the fast food joint. You're going to get in and it makes me feel, because I kind of want to make this, and you guys don't have to spill the beans on yourself, but I'm going to make it a little bit personal about our own habits when we're on the road, just the three of us, because as you mentioned, Kenny, we've got a lot more options. I can get to places where I can get healthier options, things like that. But a lot of times I will still choose to do that easy, quick option. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go through and I'm going to grab a burger and fries and a Coke and hit the road again. And because I got places to be and people to visit, that kind of stuff. And I stop and think, is it for me? I mean, I've got other options I can get there. And even there, was there something else I could have picked besides what I just shoveled into my face? Because that wasn't a real good option for me there. Because as I was thinking about this podcast and as we're discussing this here, there's certain things, genetic things that we can't change about ourselves, but then there's things that we do to ourselves, and what we put into our body is a big deal.
No doubt.
The food we put into our body. One thing, I read an article the other day, and it was actually from Mayo Clinic, because I was looking about stuff about, how to be healthy on the road, and what we put in our bodies for as food, and then drinking enough water. And I started thinking about how much water I drink in a day. And I guarantee you, the majority of us are massively dehydrated.
No doubt.
They say recommend 8 glasses of water in a day on average. And I'm like, well, I drink a cup of coffee in the morning, and I might have Diet Coke for lunch, and then I might not drink anything else till dinner. And I'm just not staying hydrated. That's a health issue. That affects you physically.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that we need to think about is as drivers, the three of us, the choices we're making as far as what food we're putting in our bodies, making sure that we're getting enough water to drink. I think that's a big thing. And I tell you guys, for me, and I know this is tough, and I've seen presentations from a guy that's a truck driver. I was at a leadership symposium a few years ago, and he did a presentation. It was really awesome, but exercise is a big deal. And however you get that when you're on the road is big. You may not have access to a gym. You may not be able to go run 5 miles or whatever, but being physically active when you're on the road, and I'm preaching to myself here, because I try to, if I'm on the road for 3 or 4 days or maybe the week, I try to work out a couple times a week when I'm on the road. I just try to do that, because I know I do that when I'm home, and I try to do it when I'm on the road. I try to get into a gym if I can't, and I'm doing just body weight workout, stuff like that. Because I think it's important, and it makes me feel, it makes me feel healthier. It makes me, I just feel like I'm more energized when I do that. But, I know for our drivers out there that are listening to us are saying, yeah, workout, right. Where am I going to do that in the middle of a truck stop? And I know it's tough, but I've seen drivers say, here's how you do this. And you can look up videos. I wish I could remember that guy's name, and I've forgotten his name, but he talked about having a workout system for drivers that was just right around your truck, and it would only take a few minutes. And it's as you stop, you're doing your 30-minute break, whatever, get a little exercise when you're doing that, and I don't know, I'm throwing that out there, but it's something that for me that I look to do when I'm on the road. And I'm telling you guys, I don't do a very good job. I wish I did a better job, because Kenny, you hit it on the head. We have more options in our 4-wheelers than our men and women out there driving the 18-wheelers. We just do. And I'm not taking advantage of that like I should. And I really should. I try to do good when I'm on the road. I really do. But there's just days when it's just like, you know what? This is the easy, quick option. And doggone, those fries taste good there. And I'm going to go through and get one. And I don't know. I don't want to throw you guys out there if you don't want to talk about it, but I mean, are you guys just personally, are you running into those kind of situations for yourself?
Absolutely. And Jim and I both are guilty of exactly. I tell you, there's 2, and I'm not going to mention them because we don't mention vendor names on here, but
you don't have to. I know who you're talking about.
There's 2 fast food places that I have their app on my cell phone. And I went through the drive-through in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all things, of one of them. Here about 2 weeks ago, and there was a high school kid out there taking the order. And when I asked him to scan my app, he said, "My word, I've never seen that many points." and I'm sitting there thinking, when the kid that works there is impressed with how many points I have in the app, it hit me like a ton of rocks. You're going there too much,
Yeah.
But the kid said, I've never seen that many points. And, but I want to, and I'm going to close and let you and Jim close. Every time we do one of these podcasts, I learn something from you two guys. Y'all are both so sharp, so knowledgeable, and I'm so blessed to have y'all in my sphere of influence. And I'm so grateful for that. And y'all have shared so many tips today that I hope people will take to heart. But for our audience, if you don't remember anything else Kenny Ray said today, I want you to remember this. We have got to be intentional about pursuing good health. It is not going to happen on its own. It's not going to happen. The default setting for us in the trucking world is not good. Default is we sit all day, we eat unhealthy, and we get hurt. That's the default. And so for us to change that, we've got to be intentional. It means we've got to do it by design. We have to think through on the front end. Safety directors, owners of trucking companies, don't put the burden on your drivers. You get involved with this as well. We've got to have intentionality about helping our drivers be healthy and injury-free.
Kenny, just to build off of that, you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we've got a big shortage of truck drivers out there right now. And so this is an opportunity, thinking outside the box, thinking about company initiatives. This helps us keep the drivers that we've got healthy and on the road where we need them. Until we bring in more drivers, we need to be absolutely taking care of those that we've got.
No doubt.
Well, guys, this was a great conversation. I think it's an important topic, and Kenny, I think you've hit on it with your comment about making intentional decisions. It's something that I think a lot of folks don't think about, and we are just by default going back to what we've always done, and that's not a good thing. So I would echo that and echo what Jim had shared with us, and just encourage everybody that's listening to us out there. Don't settle for the status quo. Let's make some intentional decisions. We want you guys to be around for a long time. We want you to be healthy while you're doing it. This is a topic that I think just needs to gain some traction, and we need to have more conversation about it in our industry because it's really important. And with that said, before we close, we've got some cool things coming up here on the podcast in the near future, and I know Jim's got some info on that. Jim, I'll just turn it over to you and share with our listeners what we've got coming up here on Driving the Line.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got an exciting couple months ahead of us here. And so just to share the topics with you and to wet your whistle, so to speak, we're going to be discussing in December America's role models in the American Road Team. That one is sure to be inspiring. And trucking industry end-of-year reminders. All right, what are we doing to close out this year, moving into 2024? And in January, we are going to have our very first guest speaker. His name is Bruce Morton. He's a risk management consultant with Marsh & McLennan Agencies. And we're going to be discussing in a two-part series mental health in the trucking industry. And the title of that's going to be Where Mental Health Meets the Road. Bruce Morton, he specializes in this, and he is going to be he's going to bring a new edge and a new angle to our podcast for this series. And we hope you'll all join us for the upcoming podcast.
Thanks, Jim. And that's a cool topic coming up with our first guest speaker, because today we're discussing our physical health, trying to be physically fit and injury free. And that podcast is going to be devoted, that two-parter is going to be devoted to our mental health. So I really think that's just a good tie-in, because we're trying to cover a lot of topics here with our podcast. And again, I think the next 3 podcasts we've got coming up there that Jim mentioned are going to hit on some fantastic points. So thanks for sharing that. And that's our time today. Jim, Kenny, appreciate you guys more than you know. And to all of our listeners, stay safe out there. Thanks for joining us. And please catch us next time on Driving the Line, the podcast that is always in the pursuit of safety.
that's all the time we have for this episode of Driving the Line, The Pursuit of Safety. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and thank you for listening. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Driving the Line, The Pursuit of Safety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other app you're using. You can also follow Marsh McLennan Agency on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, thanks again for listening. Drive safely, everyone.